Thanks for watching my first podcast, everyone. This is my friend and my powerlifting coach, Dustin Reed. Hails from, now I've never actually said the name of your town out loud. Is it Etowah? Is that how you pronounce it?
It's Etowah.
Etowah. Okay,
Close
well,
enough.
it's close to, actually, it's very similar to the capital city of Canada is Ottawa with an O. So that's interesting. Etowah. Etowah, Tennessee, USA. He is an elite level power lifter, a gym owner. And he doesn't think he's elite level. To me, he's elite level. 800 plus pound squatter. Gym owner, owns Etowah Barbell Club in that area. So if you're ever nearby, swing by. I certainly plan to do that, and I live 1,100 miles away. There's something about this guy that makes you want to come and train with him. Anyway, thanks for being on my podcast, man. Appreciate it.
No, man, thank you. Like I said, I'm never done anything like this either, so I apologize if I'm a little nervous or kind of jumbling around, but I've never had anything like this, so I think it'll be cool. It's interesting for both of us.
Yeah, well, I'm hoping, if I post this on Powerlifting Motivation Chat, it'll, hopefully get me some views, and like I said to you earlier, hopefully get you some more coaching clients maybe. When we go into...
I think just in general, I think this could be really cool, like maybe... something like setting up like once a week or once a month, doing one of these with somebody who is in powerlifting, motivation chat. I think it'd be really cool. Like if you interviewed all of the coaches, and then you can post this up and put it in the group, and everybody that's always on there asking about, well, who do I want to hire or who should I do this? Well, they can refer to these and learn everything you want to know about that guy.
I noticed you're wearing one of your Reed Strength System t-shirts there. I just had mine on the other day, and as you know, hit another rep PR. So I think there is something to those t-shirts. I'm telling you, there's did you lace the threads with steroids or?
Yeah, I think that's what we did actually.
Topically applied.
It would have. The shirts could have been cheaper, but I didn't want to settle for any homebrew stuff. So like we went pharmaceutical grade test and soaked all the shirts in them, and then you pre-washed them in testosterone. But I mean, everybody that wears them really seems to like them, and they're great cuts. So you look pretty. You look much bigger in these shirts than you actually are. So it's pretty cool.
Well, you'll have to release a 2.0 version with like football padding in the sleeves to just make that effect even more so. But yeah, I mean, I find I look pretty good in the mirror in my Reed Strength Systems t-shirt. Speaking of which, if anyone who's watching this wants to get one of those, where do they get them?
There's a link I'll send you so you can put it in the I guess like in the description or whatnot. But it's kahulairon.com. There's a link you go to, and the way it works is the girl she puts in pre-orders, and once she gets 10 shirts or so ordered, she'll start making them and send them out, possibly considering changing up labels or logos and whatnot. So hopefully I have some more options coming out. She did one specifically for me that was gray and black, and I thought it just looked absolutely amazing, so I'd really like to make that an option and get them out there too, because they just look freaking awesome. So yeah.
Well, that sounds great. I mean, personally, gray and black are like the two colors I like to wear most often with my t-shirts, and most of my training shirts are just old ratty gray and black t-shirts that started off as good t-shirts, and then I sweated in them too many times, armpit stains, so now I just train in them.
Yeah, that's it. So same thing. I'm not too worried about being pretty when I'm training, or at least try not to. But at the same time, I guess if you look good, you'll feel good, and if you feel good, you'll lift good.
Yeah, well, and certainly we're gonna talk about your coaching and your knowledge in various aspects of powerlifting, which, as one of your clients, I can testify is very advanced, and you've certainly done a lot for me already in the few months we've been working together. Definitely going to get more into that towards the end, but first, I want to talk a little bit about world records. Powerlifting world records are kind of confusing. Why don't you see if you can shed some light on the confusion for those who don't know?
This is, I hate this question because there's about 500 all-time world record squat, or world records.
Why so many?
Because you've got so many federations and you've got so many divisions. So you got to look. Just take the SPF for example. You've got, what is it? I believe 12 weight classes. I could be wrong on that, but I think it's 12 weight classes.
Something like
So
that,
there's
yeah.
12 world records right there. Then you've got the juniors. So now you've got 24 world records. Then you've got masters. Well, now you're 36. Well, then you got masters with knee sleeves. So, another 12. Wraps, submaster, masters, military, police. So it's ridiculous. It just goes on and on and on. And then on top of that, well, then you've got the other federations, and there's probably, I don't know, but I mean, just off head, there's at least 10 very, very popular federations, and I know there's way more than that, but there's 10 that, you could name off and pretty much anybody know who they are. Well, I mean, there's 120 world records right there, just between the men's all-time world record, or the world record for that federation. So to dumb this down, if you do not hold the all-time world record, the all-time heaviest weight ever lifted in that weight class, I don't care how old you are, I don't care it doesn't matter. In my opinion, if you do not hold the all-time world record, you don't have a world record. You may have a federation record, may have a state record, which, in my opinion, no one cares about. But that's just me. That's my opinion. If you don't have that all-time world record, you don't have a world record. And that's about as easy as I can make it, because this can be extreme. It kills me. I can't tell you how many 200 and 300-pound squats I have seen that are somehow world records. Let's say you got guys, that are trophy hunters. Okay, so they go on to federation records and they look and see it. They look and see what category, at what weight class that nobody's ever competed in.
Right.
You got some Joe Blow nobody he's a 220, benches 315, and he goes and enters the 220 submasters whatever in this federation that nobody's ever heard of. Well, now all of a sudden he's the only person that's ever competed in that federation, but technically he's got a world record now. So,
well, it's a fairly loose definition of the term world record, isn't it? And that's why there's so many of them. I agree with you 100%. I mean, to say you have a world record, that has certain connotations in other sports. And I think it should in powerlifting too.
For sure.
Connotations that are a lot narrower, where there's only one of them.
And I think that's one of the big problems with powerlifting, though, is, and it's from federation to federation. Nobody can agree on anything.
That's why there's so many federations.
Yeah, that's the truth. And that's exactly what happens in the sport of powerlifting. You don't like the rules, so you leave the federation you're in and just go start your own.
Exactly.
Well, now you've got a federation, So, but I mean, it's like, we can't even decide on the term raw. First raw competition, back in, I think, 2006, 2007. So in 12 years, we cannot determine what raw lifting is, but yet we keep smashing world records in it. So, it's and it's one of those, I really don't care what your definition is, but even then, like even though you go past raw, then you go into single ply lifting. Well, this federation only allows you to wear a single ply suit in federation. That is one layer of a squat suit. Well, then this federation lets you wear a single ply layer squat suit, but they also allow single ply briefs on under that.
So essentially, it's multiply in the hip area then.
Correct. Yes, but it's still single ply.
It's considered single ply.
This single ply in this federation may be different than this single ply in this federation. So how do you really know who the hell beat who?
It's
Same thing with multiply.
It's like trying to get programs on a Mac and a PC to talk to each other on computers. It doesn't work. Like the federations,
and it doesn't.
They're just different enough that like the categories, the rules, they're not homogenous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the issue. It's even like depth. Oh man, I love discussing depth, because I could stand up right now butt naked and ask you to point where you think my hip crease is, and chances are it's different than where I think it's is. So, it's just, there's just so much division in this sport to actually say who has the single all-time world records. It's really hard to say.
Yeah, well, you can see why. I mean, with so many federations, so many rules, so many interpretations, different definitions of the same term, it's kind of a mess, isn't it?
No, it really is, and I think it's one of the biggest reasons that powerlifting is still in the dark compared to some like strongman and CrossFit that's taken off. I think powerlifting is it's an extremely simple sport that has been beyond overly complicated, and it hinders the sport a lot.
Well, yeah, I mean, there has been talk over the years of, will powerlifting ever be in the Olympics? It should be in the Olympics. Obviously, maybe we like to think it will be, but I don't think it will be anytime soon, not with this complication.
No, I don't. That alone, I think, is enough to make sure it never shows up. But I don't know. I personally don't care if powerlifting ever makes it into the Olympics because, I mean, I, I like to see freaks on drugs lift a lot of big weights, and that drug testing right there kind of throws you out of the Olympics. So I
Well, that's
personally
true.
don't care.
Yeah, that's true.
I personally do not care if powerlifting ever makes it to the Olympics. I think it would be cool, and if you're good enough to go, that would be amazing, and you should take it. And if I ever had the opportunity to work with someone who was drug free and had a shot at it, that would be amazing. But me personally, even if I was good enough to ever go to the Olympics, which I'm not, I don't care. Doesn't bother me a bit. And I think the amount of people that bring that argument up is just asinine. We're not going to make it to the Olympics, and if we do, it's not going to be the rules that they want it to be anyways. So, it's just I don't know. This
Well,
sport's just
the way the
so much
sport is
drama.
now, like, it doesn't fit with the Olympic model, not remotely. I
No,
mean,
not
you,
at
you
all.
have Olympic weightlifting, for instance. That fits with the Olympic model. I mean, it used to be three lifts: the clean and jerk, the
Hmm.
snatch, and the press until what, 1974, I think, when they eliminated the
Yeah.
press. Or was it
Yep.
72? I don't remember for sure. 70s anyway.
It was in the '70s for sure. I can remember that. Um,
And then the press started getting too weird, right? Like guys were leaning back, basically doing a bench press without a bench. And you can see why they cut that out. So it's just been the two lifts ever since the past several decades, the clean and jerk and the snatch, highly drug tested, highly regimented, and homogenous standards across the board with those two movements. Basically, just a really disciplined sport layout, I guess, in the sense that there's not a lot of room for interpretation. Powerlifting is
yeah,
nothing but room for
yes,
interpretation.
yes, for sure. And that's one of the biggest issues with it. Like in weightlifting, there's really only one way to do a snatch and a clean. Yeah, I understand you've got some modifications of stance here and there, but at the end of the day, if you don't do it right, you're going to miss the lift anyways.
Oh, for sure.
So, whereas in powerlifting, that may not necessarily be the case.
Well, I mean, those
Like,
Olympic lifting, like, it's so technical. I mean, not that powerlifting isn't technical, but I mean, at that level, you see these Olympic weightlifters, like everything's got to be perfect, or just you're right,
yeah,
it just the weight won't come up. That's all there is to it.
and
Powerlifting, you can
it's
you can kind of like grind and break your back and still get the lift sometimes.
mhm,
You can't really do that
for
with
sure.
Olympic weightlifting.
No, and that's what I mean. Olympic weightlifting. I mean, if you're off by a millimeter, you're going to make that lift exponentially harder.
Oh, so much
So
harder.
chances
Yeah.
are, when you get to something like this, the guy that just posted the video the other day of like the 585 clean and press, I think it was 585, 560, 580. I don't know. Just I mean, insane. Like when you've got that much weight overhead, you have to be absolutely perfect or you're going to miss. It's not even a matter of are you strong enough to do it. You have to be that perfect to
No,
do it.
that was the Russian guy, wasn't it? What's his name? Is it Lasha? Or...
I can't remember his name. I don't remember if he was even Russian. I just know he's stronger than hell.
Yeah.
That's all I really remember.
Well, I mean, anyone is putting 500 plus pounds over their head,
Oh
regardless of
yeah,
how they get it
insane.
there. Just that's some superhero stuff.
Yeah, I mean it really is. I mean the guy is it's phenomenal to watch. I mean it's absolutely insane.
Speaking of, you know, this sort of superhero mentality that kind of comes with moving huge amounts of weight, whether it's Olympic weightlifting or powerlifting. I mean, maybe you can share a little bit about your experience, getting into the sport and your drive to keep going. I think uh, a lot of powerlifters share that, similar versions of that same drive if they're in the sport for longer than a few years, if they stick with it long term and continue trying and push through injuries, you have to be a little bit crazy, like we were talking about earlier. And for me, a lot of that has to do with, I think, if I'm honest, this sort of superhero fantasy that I never got over from the time I was a kid. And this is just like an adult version of that. I want to be way stronger than everyone I meet walking down the street. Want to be the strongest guy in every room I step into, including ideally a room full of powerlifters one day.
Yeah.
So is that how it is for you?
To an extent, yeah. I don't know if I would say necessarily superheroes that. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not. I never really was huge into the superhero aspect. I mean, don't get me wrong. I was a kid. I loved it. And looking back, my favorite superheroes were definitely like Juggernaut, the Hulk, guys that were just freaks.
Yeah.
But I didn't. My powerlifting career, or my I guess my experience didn't start because I wanted to be like that. I got into all of this because I used to be extremely obese. I had a 52-inch, 52-inch waist at 12 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
You were a big kid.
I was a fat kid. That's 100%. I was about 5 foot tall, 250 plus pounds, had a 52-inch waist. And I remember the day that I was done. My dad, we went out to, we're trying to go out and go school shopping for the new year, and none of the blue jeans that we found could fit me. And my dad had to special order blue jeans that had like an elastic sweatpants band that I could put them on.
Man, and that had to be hard being a kid, and
yeah, big time. And that was just the final straw. Don't get me wrong. I had been, made fun of every day for being the fat kid. I was going on 13 years old before I really had a girlfriend. I was very fat, very unhealthy. I come from a very big family that are very obese, diabetes. To be honest, my family is very Southern American, stereotype. They're all very heavy.
A lot of fried chicken and funnel cake.
Oh, yeah. And don't get me wrong. Still to this day, I will mess up fried chicken, fried pork, pretty much anything. If you'll fry it, I'll try it.
Who won't, really? I mean, it's delicious.
Yeah, I love it, man. But that was actually what got me into powerlifting. And then, what got me into weightlifting. And I lost about 100 pounds over the next year. I bought Arnold Schwarzenegger's Modern Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding, and
got a copy on my shelf right over there. It's a classic.
Buddy, I've got it somewhere. It's in like 3 different folders because I read it so much that it just fell apart, and I started piecing it together. And I basically went on an egg whites and oatmeal, tuna fish, and white rice 5 times a day diet at 12 years old. I walked. My mom was a single mother, so we didn't have a lot of help. Didn't have a lot of money, and when I was, out of school, she was still working. She'd work 12, 16-hour days, damn near every day. It would seem like she worked at a gas station. She was a manager. She's still a manager of that gas station. I'm not sure how it is up there, but down here, gas stations, most of the people that are working those jobs are not the most reliable of people. So my mom was constantly having to work doubles and work over and stuff like that for people calling out. So when I decided that I wanted to do this that year for Christmas, I asked her, all I wanted was a gym membership. And she busted her butt and paid, I believe, $350 or something like that for a year membership at Powerhouse Gym in Fort Oglethorpe, Georgia. And pretty much every day after school, if she didn't just happen to be off work, I would walk I think it was 4.5, maybe 5 miles there from the school, train, and then if she still wasn't off work, well, then I walked another 6 miles home.
Man.
And yeah. And what sucks is, to be honest, is, I'm fairly dedicated. I'm extremely dedicated. However, I have never had the same motivation that 12-year-old Dustin had. And I wish I could find it because I'd be unstoppable. It's just being completely honest with you. And so either way, I really got into powerlifting, and I stayed with weightlifting and whatnot because I didn't want to be fat. I wanted to look good, and I wanted to feel good, and I enjoyed being strong. And after I got out of the Army, I just happened to run into Sam Bird at the time. That in a Rush gym, he had just got out of law school and was on a treadmill reading a book. And I fangirled out, went and talked to him, and asked him if I could train with him.
So you knew who he was right away.
Well, I had seen USAPL, or not USAPL, USA Power magazine, I believe is what it was. I think 10, 15 years ago. There's a magazine that used to go out, really, back before Facebook, stuff like that was really all that popular. And that was the main, source of information for powerlifting at the time, really.
Yeah.
So I had seen him a lot on that, and I thought it was really cool. I'll tell you back then how long ago it was, is that Sam was still competing in multiply. And I remember looking at this magazine and seeing this 220-pound man that just squat 1,100 pounds, and I couldn't believe just how unfathomably strong that was. And I remember looking at, he was wearing his multiply squat suit, and at the time, I had no idea that was a squat suit. I just thought it was a normal, just singlet that all the guys wore, and, it was just, that's what it was. So, I was had no idea what the hell I was doing. And I just happened to meet Sam, and I was like, look, I want to squat 1,100 pounds. I want to be strong. And he kind of chuckled, and he said, well, I squat every Sunday at 9 a.m. Can you be here? And I was working a job at a warehouse, making really good money, but I worked Sunday mornings. I told Sam, I said, yep, I'll be there, no questions asked. I walked into this job, and mind you, I'm 22 years old, and it's very good money, very, very good money, more money than I've ever thought about making coaching. And I told him, I said, I need Sunday mornings off. I need to switch to third shift. I need to switch positions. I need to do whatever. I don't care what I have to do. I'll take any job. I'll take a pay cut. And they said, oh, well, we don't have anything for you. And I said, roger that. And I walked out and quit that job and got a job at a gas station so I could work with Sam. Man. And 6 years later, here I am.
Well, you said you lost your sort of 12-year-old determination, but that sounded pretty determined too.
Well, don't get me wrong. I have, unfortunately, that motivation has been gone for about the past 2 to 3 years. And I say that I could be doing some really cool stuff right now because, about 2.5 years ago was when I squat that 815. And if I could have held that motivation, one of two things would happen. I would have squat 900 by now, or I would be broken, done. It's just that simple. Because like I said, at the time I was, painkillers and alcohol to get through workouts. And I imagine 2 or 3 more years of that probably would not have worked out in my favor. But I'm also very good at being lucky. So,
well, being lucky, but and I think we can if you're comfortable sharing, there's some pretty amazing stories. Maybe a combination of luck and your inner fire to just fight through anything, so you can get back to moving massive weights. Why don't you talk about your Army injury and coming back from that, if you're comfortable?
Well, I don't want to get into it too much, but essentially what happened is, it was not overseas. It wasn't in combat or something like that. So I don't want anybody to think, that I'm some badass that was jumping into a combat zone and whatnot. But we were training up, and the last jump I took, I hit the ground extremely hard. In airborne school, they teach you something called a PLF. It's a parachute landing fall. And essentially what it is you just look and see which direction you're drifting. So if you're falling this way, you want to turn your body in like a rocking chair, leg, going this way, so that hopefully you go ankles, knees, butt, lats, and the force is kind of distributed.
Right.
However, I've never been very graceful whatsoever, and I couldn't tell which direction I was falling. And I turned my body. I tried to PLF, but I was going the wrong way. And I just speared the ground. And when I did, this hip crunched up into this side, dislocated, ruptured 2 discs in my lower back, my L4, L5, L5, S1, my L3, L4. Above that is bulging and has a tear. Side nerve damage in my right leg. The hip obviously has been giving me issues ever since. Probably tore the labrum back then as well, when it was dislocated and put back in. I was down for quite a while. I believe it was about 6 months. And then at the time I was still in the Army, and I didn't want to leave the Army. I wasn't into powerlifting at this time. I didn't have any skills outside of working construction, and I didn't want to work construction anymore. So, I joined the military with a goal to be in there for 20-something years, and I wanted to retire. So I did everything I could after that injury to stay in. However, after the 6 months, I still could not pass one of the 12, whatever you have to be able to do. Like, I passed the PT test, no problem, but there's 12 little things that you have to be able to do as an infantryman, and believe it or not, it was sitting down. I had to be able to sit down in a closed space, like, say, a Humvee or something along those lines, for 12 hours. I can't do that. Still to this day, I can't do that. After sitting for much longer than about an hour, my right leg will start to go numb. And much longer after that, it begins to burn. And then if I sit for about 4 or 5 hours, I actually lose quite a bit of control of it. So to sit for 12 hours and then be able to just get up and run full speed ahead, I couldn't do it. And that was the whole reason they sent me home. But I mean, in general, the rehab, it was shitty. The pain was miserable. And I'm still to this day dealing with it. So, I don't know if I ever really recovered from it. If I would stop powerlifting, I would be fine. And I know that. I honestly, strongly believe that if I would stop powerlifting, day-to-day life would be fine. But I can't bring myself to do it.
Well,
and I want to.
It's like what I've heard from well-meaning friends of mine as well when I'm dealing with injuries, albeit much more minor than that one. But it's like, well, just clearly your body's telling you something. Maybe you're not meant to do this. I'm like, well, it's either I push through and find a way to stay reasonably healthy and keep doing it, or I quit and die inside. So you don't understand that.
That's my thing. Is right now. If I never squat 9, if I never squat 1,000, I'll be okay because I tried, and that's all I can say I did is I don't quit. I don't care, even when I should. It's right here on my chest. Got it right before I went through RASP. Never quit. It's just that simple. I don't. I get up every morning. It's right there in the mirror. I see it, and I don't quit, and even when I should. It's just like this last meet, my SI, it completely popped out of place, couldn't feel my leg, I couldn't walk. David Williamson and Michael Bales took turns carrying me to the bench so that I could bench press, so I could finish the meet.
Man.
And for what? It wasn't even a PR total.
And non-powerlifters won't get that at all. Like, what are you, nuts? Do you want to die? Like, do you want to die young? But no, I totally understand because, I've never had anyone carry me to the bench, but I've gotten under plenty of bars where my body was screaming at me not to, and I did it anyway, and probably did twice as many sets as was even written in that workout because I wanted to prove to myself this injury wouldn't hold me back. Stupid stuff like that. But I think what it comes down to, and tell me if you agree, but like when you want to be truly great at anything in life, whether it's powerlifting, any other sport, or even something non-physical, in the business world or anything you want to really excel at, not just be good at, not just be the best that in your little sphere of influence, but be the very best you possibly can be, then you have to be kind of unbalanced and unhealthy in some ways.
There's no question. There's no question. Man, I have done some things that I know have taken days off of my life, maybe months, and I would do it again. If I could get this hip to work with me, and I knew that I had 6 months to put together a perfect training cycle, I would do them again and probably more.
You'd probably get that 900-pound squat.
Yeah, but it's worth it to me. It's worth it. And maybe that's, crazy, but this sport is the reason I have a life insurance policy. I got a wife and a kid, so and I don't want to die. I don't, but there's, I mean, God knows, what can happen, and but between all the food, the drugs, which, like I said, mind you, because I haven't really competed in quite a while, I have obviously not really done any drugs. But back then, I didn't care. All I cared about were the numbers, and the eating, all the food, all the doing everything I can to go to sleep more, recovery, drugs, you name it. I didn't care what I had to do. I was setting my life revolved around this sport, 100%. And it's one of the biggest fears that I've got now is, my business, my gym, my everything is based around the sport of powerlifting. And I'm terrified to quit because then what do I have?
Yeah.
I'm not one of these, I'm not Larry Wheels, I'm not somebody like that, or Stan Efferding, who was also an IFBB pro bodybuilder. There's a lot of times I look at myself and I personally don't even look like I lift, which I know is a ton of body dysmorphia and bullshit like that. But
No, we all have
nonetheless, yeah. But nonetheless, I'm not a freak, and freaks are what attract people, and I've still got to put something out to keep clients coming in, and the best way for me to do that is to keep putting PRs on the platform, whether they're mine or my clients. So for me at this point, on top of, just wanting to quit for my body of powerlifting, I've got this jumble where if I back away from powerlifting now, I feel like that I could literally lose everything. And deep down logically, I know that that's not the case, but I think this is my new excuse to not quit.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, you can come back from pretty much anything in terms of circumstances, especially in this part of the world where opportunity is ample. But
Yes.
I mean, I get where you're coming from. I mean, you and I, we've been lifting a long time. Like, it's so much an identity thing after a certain number of years and a certain number of effort. It's like, who am I really if I give up this sport? I don't know. Like, that's not a healthy thing. That's not a great thing. I mean, we're both husbands and fathers. You mentioned that. I've got a 2-year-old girl. Your son is 8 now, is he?
Yep.
And you and I both want to be around for our kids and our wives. I know you well enough to know that you're a great dad, a good husband, but it's a fight for guys like us to keep family life and stuff in balance, isn't it? And because this sport will take over as much as you let it. And if you do nothing, if you just continue in the sport and don't think about it, the default, I think, is for it to take over way more of your life than you intended to give.
I have seen, and now mind you, I've only been around competitive powerlifting since 2013. So we're talking 6 years. But I have seen in that 6 years, probably 20, if I just had to guess, 20 amazing relationships. Well, I take that back. Could have been amazing relationships ended because of this sport.
I'm not surprised.
And no, I mean, it happens all the time, and it's because of it's an addiction.
It is. It's an addiction. I'm guessing, most of the people who watch or listen to this podcast are going to be lifters, so they're going to understand and identify with this. But for the folks who aren't, I want to talk a little bit about, like, we've kind of covered, why we do it. Like, it just gets into your blood, it gets into your head, and so much of your identity gets wrapped up in powerlifting and the numbers you put up on the platform. But, most people, non-lifters or people who exercise on a casual level, they probably have this idea that, lifting weights along with cardio, some form of regular exercise is healthy. It's good for you. And it is. So
Yep.
why the disconnect? Like, where do you think, in your opinion, we crossed that line where it stopped being a healthy thing to go to the gym and lift weights, and it became something where we actually had to fight to keep our health, because if we weren't careful, we'd lose our health? When did that
Yeah.
switch happen, do you think?
I don't know if there's actually a time that it happens, because in my opinion, it takes a special, maybe special is not the word, but a certain type of person for that switch to ever flip. There's plenty of people in this world that are okay with just being average at best.
Yeah.
And if that's who you are, then that switch is never going to flip for you. Never.
If you're into lifting weights, you'll probably stay fairly healthy as long as you don't terribly mess up the movements. If someone shows you how to do it right, then you're never going to be dealing with chronic tendonitis and hip pain like for years.
No, see, and that's, believe it or not, that's like I said. So I messed my back and my hip up in 2011. And I had lifted weights all through high school and stuff like that, but it was because I wanted to look good. No other reason. It had nothing to do with health. It had nothing to do with feeling better. I just was tired of being fat and not having a date. Like that was why I got into it, and that was enough for me for quite a while. And then after I messed my back up, when I was in the Army, I didn't weightlift at all, really. We did a little bit of CrossFit here and there, but for the most part, it was running, rucking, body weight, stuff like that. After I messed my back up, I got into weightlifting again because it made my back feel better. It made my hip feel better to get in here and strengthen up everything, lots of planks and core work and stuff like that. And I was pretty depressed at the time, but because of coming out of the Army and not knowing what I was going to do with myself, but I got into it again because it made me feel better. And at the time, before I was really pursuing, crazy, competitive powerlifting, I felt great, and believe it or not, I didn't have any issues out of my back and hips until I become roughly a mid 600-pound squatter. And at that point, everything just kind of started pulling. And as I got stronger, my hips pulled even harder. And I think that was, so to kind of answer that question, if you just take this as a very, as an average approach, like you said, go in the gym, lift 2 or 3 days a week, push yourself, but that doesn't necessarily mean, go for 1 rep maxes every, week. You'll be healthy. It is healthy.
Yeah.
But the sport of powerlifting is probably the furthest from a healthy sport you'll ever see.
And it's hard to admit that I agree with that, because for years I sort of preached strength training for health, right, to people around me, and it can be like I don't want to paint lifting weights in this terrible way for non-lifters who might be watching this. Like if you don't lift weights, in my opinion, you should. In my opinion, everyone should lift, especially as you get 40 and older, because you have known effects that aging can have, negative effects. You have muscle atrophy, you have your bone density decreasing with time, you have your joints and ligaments atrophying. It's not a good situation to age without trying to hold on to as much strength as you can through lifting weights. And if you do lift weights, you're going to hold off those negative effects a long time if you do it in a healthy and smart way. So I don't want to give the wrong impression here. Like, we're talking about two different things. We're talking about weightlifting and exercise for health versus an unbalanced obsession with the sport of powerlifting, which is
here's
two very different things.
What me and you do is not strength training. I don't care. I get it. We're following strength training principles. But me and you, we are power lifters. We power lift. Yeah, we get stronger. But you Google strength training right now. Chances are it's not going to be a picture of Andrei Malinchev squatting, 1,100 pounds.
No.
It's some dude with abs, benching maybe 2 plates, and looks good and he's healthy. That's strength training. Strength, anybody can do strength training. Anybody, the most unmotivated, undedicated, anybody could get into the gym and do a simple full body circuit 2 or 3 times a week
And in
and
my
feel better
opinion,
about it.
everyone
With even,
should
yes,
do
I
some
agree.
version of
And
that.
even if done with half-assed effort, they're still going to progress and be a little bit better for that. But that is not what powerlifting is.
Not at all. Not at all.
And I think that's where the confusion comes in on that. Lifting for health and powerlifting, bodybuilding, strongman, CrossFit, even Olympic lifting, none of it in any shape, form, or fashion is good for your body
No.
when taken to the extreme, mind you.
No, and the extreme is exactly where guys who, like us, whose identities have been so deeply rooted in the sport for so long, whether the sport is powerlifting, whether it's bodybuilding, strongman, whatever, the extreme is where you want to go. Like the extreme end of things kind of sucks you in. For me, it was gradual, and maybe you can share your experience. I mean, I started off like you, a young kid, liked to lift weights because I wanted to grow my biceps. Right? I was, kind of naturally lanky and skinny. Kind of the opposite of you, I guess, but I wanted to put on some size and look good. And at that time, I was aware of guys like Arnold, and of course, I had my copy of his bodybuilding encyclopedia too. I thought those guys were natural. That's how naive I was when I was, a
I did too
13-year-old
for a
kid.
very long time.
Yeah, and I remember when that bubble was finally burst for me. I think I was about 14 and just kind of disappointed for a few days, and I got
But
over
I'll
it.
tell you,
But
I was older than that. I think I was 17 or I was damn near 18 years old when I really found out, you know, about steroids and whatnot. Um, and kind of unfortunately how I found out about them. But nonetheless, that was when I realized that those guys were, I don't want to say lying, but it was an act, I guess, to an extent. But you have to do that, or you'll never sell.
no, well, that's right. And it is, I think it is definitely one of the messed up things about the fitness industry. Like the whole thing is built on lies who take advantage of young guys like us who've been bitten by the iron bug and don't know better. And then by the time we get to the stage of lifting we're at now and, know all that stuff, it's like we're too bitter and just don't care anymore to even, to tell young guys coming up the truth. I'm just like, well, they'll figure it out if they
Well,
want to.
see, my problem is I will say if you bring me a new kid from the gym or that wants to get into the gym, I will waste and I waste is the word, and this is why I don't do it as much. I will waste 2 to 3 hours of my time for not a dollar, other than just because they seem interested. And I'll lay out everything that I can think of that I wished I would have known when I first started. And they will maybe listen to 1% of it.
Yeah.
So that's where I guess my cynicism kind of comes out. Is it sounds kind of shitty, but I've got about 50 clients right now, which is as many as I'm willing to handle. My phone is constantly, I guarantee you, after we get done with this, I've probably got 20 messages, couple videos, and God only knows how many Facebook notifications. I don't have time to do it anymore if you're not going to pay me.
Yeah.
And that sounds, maybe, but at the same time, you wouldn't expect to go into a doctor's office and him to just tell you everything and then not send you a bill.
Well,
Um,
actually, thankfully in Canada, that is exactly the
yeah,
situation.
whatever.
But
You guys don't count. You guys don't count at all. But so either way, you get what I'm getting at.
yeah, no, totally. And I mean, the good thing about charging something for a service that you have expertise in is there's a filtering process to that. You weed out the guys who aren't serious, who are just going to listen to
Yep.
1% of what you say. And I mean, I remember being a young guy like that, and I remember more experienced lifters telling me stuff, and immediately, almost immediately, it was like a knee-jerk reaction. I mean, I knew in the back of my head I should be listening to these guys, guys who at the time seemed like they were moving incredible weights. Like I remember when I thought a 400-pound squat was really impressive because I squatted like 135 for 10, and that's all I could do. This was when I very first started, weighed about 165, 70 pounds and no strength, no muscle. And so this 400-pound squatter, I'm talking to him one time, and he's telling me, I don't even remember what the tips were, but it was something along the lines of, needing to brace properly and stuff that, thanks to you, I've only recently really started to learn. But and I remember just thinking he's wrong in my head, and I nodded and I
Yeah.
thought, oh yeah, thanks, yeah, that makes sense. But in
Yeah.
my head I was thinking, well, that doesn't feel good to me, so who's he to say that good technique for him is the same as good technique for me? And stupid stuff. Obviously I was an idiot, and if I
Yeah.
had listened, probably would have been a lot further ahead now, because this guy is not a bad lifter. He did know what he was talking about. But
Yep.
it's like,
And
if you don't butt up against the reality of your own lack of knowledge sometimes, if you don't want it badly enough that you're messing things up regularly, then all the
yeah.
wisdom in the world is just not going to seem valuable to you.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, it's still to this day, even, I have a pretty good idea of what I'm doing, but I still, when I don't know, I admit it, and I go and talk to people that I know. It's just like we've had some issues with your bench press that we're trying to fix. I kind of milked my ideas, and then I was like, all right, well, let me send this to the best damn bencher I know. And I send it over to Michael, and he looks at it, and he talks to me, and we discuss it, and then I bring it back to you. But if I had too much ego, I mean, not only would my knowledge suffer, but your training experience with me would suffer. And it's just something you have to get over. And luckily, I don't want to say that I experienced that like crazy when I was younger. I've always been very receptive to information that, if you seemed credible, I would at least listen to it and attempt it.
Well, that's probably why you're
Not
an
saying I
800
just
pound squatter and I'm a 500-pound squatter.
I mean, maybe, I don't know, but it's I got lucky in that regard. But I've also been around, even as a kid, like with my businesses and I'm growing up, my dad was, not the greatest, not a great father at all, not a great dad in any way, but he is an amazing businessman. And, I can't tell you how much I've learned from him. And, but also at the same time, I know what not to listen to when it comes to him as well.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what you have to do with everybody. Don't just close your ears and shut the world off and live in your own little, what's the term? Michael says it all the time. It's like you're in a box and all you can hear is your voice, and it just kind of reverberates over and over. I can't remember what it's
Echo
called.
chamber?
But yeah, well, whatever. We'll work with that. We'll go with that. But you essentially kind of close the world off. And you see it all the time with people that are in training that are extremely dogmatic. Like you see some of these guys that are like from West Side is always the biggest one, and they're the greatest example. If it's not West Side, it's wrong. Period. Flat. And I mean, I hate to break it to them, but that's just not the case. And I know that's not the case because there's multiple real all-time world records, male and female, from the lightest to the heaviest, that have broken those records that have never even been to Ohio, let alone trained under Louis Simmons.
Yeah, I mean, not that
But
Louis Simmons, wasn't, didn't have
oh,
tons of knowledge. I mean, don't want to say that,
and
but
still does.
the dogma, and absolutely, yeah, he still does, and the lifters that came out of there were incredible. Obviously, I mean,
Yeah,
every power lifter knows about West Side, knows about Louis,
yeah,
and admires them. I think it's safe to say, but like it gets kind of sticky when in any area of life, in my opinion, when you start saying this is the only way.
there is absolutely nothing in this world that I can think of that there is only one way to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't think of one. I don't care if it's cooking, running your business. There's always another way to do it. And if there wasn't, there would be a lot less successful people in this world, I think.
Oh, for sure, because people think differently. We're wired differently, and yeah, I
That's
think
what, if it wasn't for the fact that everybody thinks and does things differently, there literally would be, I mean, this world would be so damn boring, for one. I mean, what's the point in even doing anything then if you're just doing the same thing that somebody else has done over and over and over again? I mean, what's the point in even, looking? Why even try at that point?
yeah.
So
Well, and part of the joy of achievement I find is, when you see a certain way that someone else has done something great, and for whatever reason that doesn't work for you, but you work hard and you work smart, and eventually you discover a different path to
yeah,
achieve equally great results for yourself.
yeah. And well, that's the thing. What works for you is not going to work for me, and what worked for me is not always going to work for this person, and vice versa. Um, it's the same thing like with my programming. When I go in with a new client, I'll be the first to admit that, after the basic questionnaire, the equipment, and all that good stuff, most of my people's programming to start out looks fairly similar. Obviously, the numbers are different, the movements are different, but the actual template and the setup is, I don't want to say identical because I'm not a copy and paster, but I follow a set rule, and that's how I base everything. But I talked about this just the other day in that Q&A I did on PMC. If in 2 or 3 months we look down the road and your numbers have stagnated, or you haven't hit a rep PR, you haven't done anything, everything just feels like garbage. Well, why on earth would I just keep making you do that for another 6 months and just pray to God that it just all of a sudden starts working?
Yeah. Well,
You know,
but and the
you
sad thing is,
can't
like,
do that.
a lot of so-called coaches do take that approach.
Do that
Yeah.
100%, and I feel bad, because it's robbery. It's outright. It's robbery. That's all there
Well,
is
I mean,
to
if
it.
you're never going to adapt things to the individual, then why aren't they just copying and pasting some program off the internet? Because they're like, that's the
Well, what's
same
sad is
thing.
that's what a lot of these coaches do. That's it's the truth. I can literally I'm not going to call him out because we get into it all the damn time, and I've publicly called him out for this shit before. But there's a lifter here, a very strong. I don't want to say knowledgeable, but a freak. But he got caught doing that. He's charging like $200 a month to literally. There's a program on bodybuilding.com. If you go to it, so they got a workout database.
Yeah.
You go in, you plug in. I want to train this many days with this goal with this, and then you hit OK, and it spits out all these workouts, and you click the one that you think looks the coolest. And that's what he was doing. and and people were paying for it, and it's one of those, like, I want to be like, shame on him, but at the same time I want to be like, shame on you. Why the fuck why didn't you do some research? You think
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
But
Well, and that to me is like, it's one of the reasons that working with you for me has been such a rewarding experience, because I know for a fact that you're going to tell me straight up what my weaknesses are. You're probably more aware of them in many ways than I am myself, because you're the expert, and you have several times already adapted my programming to work on my weaknesses. I mean, I've got naturally weak quads. I got chicken leg genetics from my grandfather's side. Nothing I can do about that. So for a while, we played around with you cueing me to do squat variations like box squats, where I would lean over more. For whatever reason, that was upsetting my low back. So you changed things again to put in more quad accessory work so I can bring up my quads and hit the more vertical low bar variation that I naturally seem to want to hit. So, right there, just for one weakness, my deficient quads, like 3 or 4 different transitions in my programming that you programmed in, so that I can address those weaknesses and come out on top, even if it takes a year or two,
and not hurt.
and not hurt. Exactly, not
That's the
not
biggest
just
thing. It's like with you've seen it. It's just like you said, with your forward lean low bar squat, emphasizing a lot of hamstrings and glutes. You're stronger, but your back is killing you. So at least in the meantime, until we bring up what is causing that lower back weakness, I'd be a piece of shit for me to just tell you, hey, suck it up, take a painkiller, get through this session.
just push
Why
through it.
would I do
Yeah,
that? Yeah, and
yeah,
that is the sign of a horrible coach who either has no idea what he's doing, or he just does not give a shit about you.
yeah,
And that's something that with my clients, I can almost say that with the very large majority of my clients, I almost become friends with every one of them.
well,
It's
certainly, I
not
think
just
it's
I
safe to
send
say we've
numbers and I
become
don't.
good friends.
Yeah, but it has to be. I have to know about you to know how to program you. There's so much more to this than just numbers. There's, how are you feeling? What happened this week? You have a manual labor job. Well, I guess you do some other stuff, but then you basically live on a farm. So, some days you're outside chopping firewood for 12 hours. Well, I've got to take that into consideration on your programming. And if I don't, your bicep tendonitis and stuff like that is just going to absolutely hate you, and that's going to shut down training immediately. So, it's just, I think with you recently, you're doing a bunch of renovations and stuff to your house, and you're just working your butt off right now. I like us to have 4 days a week training, but for you right now, it's just not plausible. However, I've seen coaches that would just say, get the fuck over it and put your family in the house to the side and get your training done. And while I will say, okay, that would probably work in the long run for powerlifting, it's going to piss your wife off. It's going to hurt your kids' feelings. Your house is still not going to be fixed. And here you are just, sure, you hit that extra session in, but was it worth the argument that it started with your wife?
Yeah, which in turn is probably, is going to mess me up mentally for the next time I try to hit a session. I won't be as good as I can be. And well, that to me right there, that quality, call it what you will, personalization or just, consideration of individual circumstances, you have that in droves. And I think that's what makes you a great coach. A lot of coaches don't have that, but man, does it make a difference. I am, because I know that about you and because I've seen it demonstrated in the way you handle my programming, I'm willing to work harder for you as my coach than I ever did for myself. Because
if you
that
don't trust yeah, exactly. If you don't trust in the program or trust in the coach, it really doesn't matter how good the program is. Chances are you're not going to put in the effort you're supposed to, and therefore you're not going to see what you should. But like I said, it's a give and take kind of street. As a coach, there's certain things that I have to get you to do, and it's my job to find a way to make them feasible for you to do them. And there would probably come to a time where if you were just constantly complaining and that you just couldn't do it, blah blah blah, that eventually I would just have to sit down and just tell you, well, then stop paying me, because there's no point.
Yeah.
And and that's something that you can ask many of my clients that I've told them 100 times. I don't. Me and Brittany have been really smart about our money, about our houses. We didn't go out and buy new cars. We don't have a lot of bills. So I'm very well off here, and I don't mean well off as in I'm rich. I just mean that if I lose a client because I just can't get them to do the bare minimum that I need them to do, or they're constantly going off program, or they're constantly doing this or that, it's not going to hurt me.
When you're keyed in mentally and you're feeling good, like you said, you usually lift good. But I've also had a number of times, and I'm sure most experienced lifters can relate with this. I know you can, but where like you go to the gym and you're feeling god awful for some reason. Maybe you didn't get enough sleep. Maybe it was just a stressful day and you're mentally off. But sometimes, like, it's sort of subtle, because sometimes you need to listen to that and sort of take it easy. But other times I have found, and maybe you can share your experience, when you push through that, you can actually surprisingly have one of the best workouts ever.
Yeah. To be, it's something that you've got to actually look at and be honest with yourself. Is it just a bad day? Is it just, a few hours of sleep that you missed? If that's the case, or maybe something like, you and your boss got into it at work, or you and your girlfriend got into it, sometimes you just have to go for it. But there's a difference. If you're feeling down, you're feeling sick, just something's not right, it's been like this for a day or two, it may be a little bit different. But, on those days that, you just had a bad day, you just got to get up and go do it. And if that's what it is now, if you're talking that you had a hellacious training, for the past 3 weeks or something like that, and you're ready for a deload and you got one more session, well, then maybe you should take an extra day off kind of deal. But not every day you're going to wake up feeling like $1 million. And to be honest, really every day that I go into the gym and I feel great, and I've said this many times, and Sam Bird's the one that originally told me that if you go into the gym and you feel great, like you're going to smash everything, nothing is hurting, you just feel unstoppable, go home. because that's the day that you're going to take advantage and you're not going to respect the weight and you're going to get hurt. And truth be told, I know that sounds kind of, almost illogical, but it really has worked for me. Every time that I guess not worked because I haven't listened to it as well as I should have. Most of the days that I get hurt are on days that I feel unstoppable.
Yeah.
Like whenever this last meet that I did, when I went into, everything was the meet, the whole prep, I felt pretty shitty. I'm not going to lie. The whole prep, nothing felt good. Nothing was clicking. None of my lifts were where they felt like they should have been. And then, I was contemplating pulling out of the meet even, but I just said, screw it, just go in, do it, have fun, and see what happens. And walked in, opened up with 700, and absolutely smashed it. Felt great. Couldn't believe how good it felt. Best squat of the cycle. We jumped up to 780, unracked the bar, and as soon as I did, just something was just off. I mean, immediately. I thought for sure Michael Bells was there with me even, and he thought, 800 plus after the way 700 went, but there was no question was just going to be a great meet. I was going to somehow come out with a huge PR, and just next thing I know, all I did just unracked the weight, so I popped, sit the bar back down, looked around, realized, I've got 5 spotters that I trust, and so unracked it again and went for it, and sure enough, just, I couldn't walk for about a month after that. So you got to kind of got to learn to listen to that or to,
Yeah. Oh, well, definitely. And I couldn't agree more. And I find it's really hard to listen to that sometimes when you really love this
yeah,
sport.
yeah, it is. And, it's the predicament that I've been in now for a while. I'm not going to go into great detail on it because right now I'm really not ready to admit it to everybody. But, a lot of people know I've dealt with chronic lower back pain, chronic hip pain. I've dislocated my hip before. I had to have it put back in. I've got, I just got a lot of issues, a lot of pain wise. And, for a good 2 years now, my body has pretty much just screamed at me to quit powerlifting. And I just refuse to listen to it. Whether I should or shouldn't, I don't know at this point, but there's been times in this sport where, I just wanted it so bad and that I didn't care how bad I was hurting. I would just take some painkillers, and get drunk to get through squat sessions, just so I could. And, I don't recommend that for anybody, but that is this sport, that it sucks you in and you can't get away from it. And I don't know if it's not a good thing. I take that back. There's no way it's a good thing.
Well, I know exactly what you're talking about. I mean, not to the same level, but I've had my share of injuries as well. And well, you told me about your all-time squat PR, which was 815, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And you
it's in
were
the gym.
in the gym, right?
Yeah, it's
You
in
were
the gym.
hopped up on painkillers, you said, and also maybe still a little bit drunk at the time.
Oh no, there wasn't a little bit drunk about it. I was hammered,
And
hammered.
well, and people watching this who aren't power lifters, they're gonna think, well, what are you nuts? Like, don't do
Yeah,
it. But
and
and I
and
think we
that's the
are we are
only.
nuts.
Yeah, you have to be. Me as a coach, as your coach for that matter. If
That's
you came to me and you told me, look, I'm hurting, like I'm drinking to get through squat sessions, I'm taking hydros to get through bench sessions. Uh, I'm gonna tell you, what the fuck are you doing? Why are you? What are you doing? Like, stop. Go. We need to go to a doctor. We need to figure out what's going on. But as the athlete, I completely understand. Sorry, dogs are going crazy. Um, but like I said, as an athlete, as a power lifter, I get it. And it kind of puts me in a hard place because, from a professional standpoint, my job is to keep you safe and to make sure you progress without getting injured, or pushing through these things. But once again, as an athlete, I have such a hard time telling you, no, you're a man. You've got to make up your mind. Is it
do what
worth
I
the
say,
risk?
not what I do, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. And Because, like I said, I'm right there with you. I can't tell you how many times I've walked up to a squat bar and Michael Bales or Brittany are both just shaking their head. They're like, "This is stupid. Why are you doing this?" And then somehow I hit it. That's like still to this day, Michael, anytime I ask him, hey, what do you think I should go up next? You think I got it in me? And he always says yes, period, flat. Because he said he's seen me do things so many times that he thought for sure that I didn't have a chance in hell.
It's been a great conversation, and that's what I wanted it to be, just a conversation between you and I. I don't know how most guys do podcasts or anything, but I think the natural, relaxed approach is better, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's much more interesting. If you're reading from a script, it's a lot harder to follow, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, and you seem like you're, just this cold, dead person, news reporter. Yeah. In other news, Dustin Reed on the podcast has an interesting shaped head. Thank you.
All right.
Sorry, I had to throw in a head comment in there.
Oh, trust me, I'm surprised it took an hour and a half to do it.
So I know you said right now you've got all the clients you want, but if spaces open up, how can people get in touch with you? People who want to get better in the sport of powerlifting.
The easiest way is probably just through Facebook or Instagram. I know Squat on Instagram. Facebook is just my name, Dustin Reed. Etowah Barbell Club also has a page that I could be contacted at. There's a phone number linked to that, 423-381-7279. If you prefer, you just give me a call. Please, take into account I'm Eastern time zone. So if you're 12 hours away, please don't call me at freaking midnight.
You say that as if it's happened before.
Oh, it's happened. It's happened a lot. I'm telling you, when I first started doing this, I wanted to be available to people, basically 24/7. And after about 2 years of that mindset, I finally was just like, guys, I apologize. I'm turning my phone off at night so I can go to sleep. And every morning I wake up with 50 to 60 messages. Every single morning. It does not fail. My Facebook notifications will be 99 plus, Instagram notifications, the same thing. It takes me an hour first thing in the morning before I even get out of bed. My alarm goes off, I roll over, I grab my phone, turn it off, and I look. And it'll take me an hour to get back to replying to everybody before I can even, really start to go make breakfast and whatnot. So there, finally, I just had to kind of just be like, look, sorry, from when I'm asleep, I am asleep, and when I wake up, I'm a coach.
Well, certainly those numbers and your busyness, I think, are a good correlation to your quality as a coach, and that has definitely been my experience. You're not paying me to say any of this, just sharing my own experience hiring you as a coach. I hired you when it was just before my first ever official meet back in June 2019, and the story of how it happened is, as you remember, I posted a form check squat video, set of 5, I think, I don't remember the weight now, on the Powerlifting Motivation Chat Facebook group, and you basically tore it apart. You're like, this sucks, this sucks, this sucks, you're rooting, you're bracing, garbage. And I remember the moment when I had to choose between just being insulted and ignoring that, or actually seeing what you had to say beyond the initial attack. and man, I'm glad I chose the second one because
I'm not everybody's cup of tea, and I know that. I've got a lot of people that, if you can't handle the truth, or at least the truth is the way I see it, chances are we're probably not going to make it, because I have no problem telling you that you're wrong. And if I think you're wrong, I'm going to go out of my way to prove why you're wrong. And it works for some people, and it doesn't for others. If you want, I'm not going to lie to you. I never got better because somebody lied to me and told me how good I was. All I've ever heard in powerlifting since day one is how shitty I am. Your genetics suck. The first time I ever got under a barbell, man, the first time ever, I tried to squat 135 because I wanted to be a badass. 135 because I thought it was cool as shit, and it buried my ass. I wasn't born to be that's strong. I really don't think I was, but I busted my ass and I worked hard.
Now you're
And
an 800 plus pound squatter.
yeah, but it's not because anybody lied to me and blew smoke up my ass. It was, the only compliment I've ever gotten this entire time that I've done this sport is how hard I work.
Yeah.
And when I'm in the gym, I will squat until I pass out. My nose is pouring blood. I'm still squatting. My hip hurts. I'm still squatting.
Man,
I'll
I thought
figure it
I was
out.
pushing
I'll find
myself
it.
hard in those sets I've been sending you recently, but I haven't shed any blood yet. Maybe I need to turn it up a little more.
Well, and now, mind you, I don't think that bleeding like that's a good thing.
No.
But my point, like it's allergies. Don't get me wrong. It's not like I'm on some stupid amount of drugs right now. My blood pressure's sky high or something. But nonetheless, the pressure, it's there. And some people, they run when they feel that, and I'm like, fuck it, this is hardcore. Let's go.
Yeah.
That's when I have fun training. And but once it's not for everybody, and some people don't respond to that, and I treat them somewhat differently. I still tell them what they need to hear, but I may not call them a pussy when I do it. So,
Yeah.
whereas you kind of respond to that. I'm like, hey, stop fucking overthinking it, man. Just go do it. And you're like, okay, all right, that's what I needed to hear. I'll stop thinking, which I know is a lot, but at least you tried.
Well, you know me well enough to know that it's a lie. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll be there in just a minute.
Well, I want to thank you, man, for making the time to talk with me, to be on this first episode of my podcast. I don't know what form this thing's going to take. Like you said, maybe I'll keep doing it with some of the other guys on PMC.
I'm telling you,
but
message Michael. Michael Bales, Mike Hedleski would be good. Mike is smart, and that's something I kind of want to put. If you don't care, leave it in here. A lot of people think me and Mike hate each other, and
that was a thing there on the group for a while.
But it wasn't. It was never hate. When I got hurt and I realized that I was on my painkillers. I was drunk all the time trying to squat, and there was just so much negativity in powerlifting at the time, and I just wanted nothing to do with it. And at the time, whether he did it on purpose or maybe I just misread it, but he seemed like the most negative damn person I'd ever met in my life. And so I just blocked him. It wasn't because we had words or we hated each other or said anything. I just didn't want to see his shit anymore. And but Mike he's extremely knowledgeable. And hell, I'm not even going to lie. I guess it's like 2 weeks ago they finally got us to unblock each other. And we've had nothing but good conversations since. And hell, I even asked his opinion on something the other day. So Mike's knowledgeable. He's damn smart. I've never had an issue with him as a lifter. I was there for a minute. It seemed like we had issues as a person. Personalities clashed. But as a lifter and as a coach, he's damn smart. I respect him. Michael Bales, once again, be a good one. Jason Stein, I think, would be a good one. I don't know how he is really on programming, but the mobility and mechanics and just how the body works, he's brilliant. And a lot of people don't want to admit it about him, but he is. So I think you could have something really cool here even if it just stays, PMC related, to actually do some really cool, fun things with this. I think it would be really good.
Well, thank you again.
I've got to hop off here, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, I appreciate your time. Go do what you need to do. It's been awesome talking to you, man. Dustin Reed, ladies and gentlemen, very knowledgeable, very accomplished powerlifter. If spots ever open up, hire him as a coach if you want to do better in the sport, because the guy knows what he's talking about. He'll tell it to you straight. He has for me, and he'll get you results. So, thanks, man. Have a good day.
Thank you.